All right, welcome back to the Soul Fresh Podcast. I'm your host, BK.
And I'm your host, J. Steve.
J. Steve, what it do?
Nothing much, brother. We back with another one. Doubling up, or as they say, doubling down.
Yeah, so...
Getting this thing ready for everybody for the 2022.
Yeah, so what's been going on for your 2022? How's it started out? Oh, yeah, as you can see, we're starting out, we're doing the whole video thing now. So, bear with us if we kind of, have a couple of skips and the bumps. But how's your 22 starting out?
Yeah, it started out decently. We made it to another year. Fortunately, me and you still alive and a lot of other people. But unfortunately, a lot of people passed away at the beginning of the year. Recently lost my cousin last week, which was a tragedy. Mm-hmm. Dealing with that, a lot of anxiety, a lot of sleepless nights.
Yeah.
This week, a lot of not eating. But I have to carry on. We have to move forward. He would not want me to slow down and stop making progress. So here we are in 2022 trying to progress further on this podcast and make it better for the people.
Yeah. Speaking of anxiety, you know what's triggering my anxiety?
Today?
In general.
Oh, COVID.
No, well, that too, because Rona's not going nowhere.
No,
apparently.
It's not going nowhere.
3 years going on and, we're still here.
New strains coming.
Mainly, I'm going to go ahead and say it, mainly because people don't want to do what they got to do. They don't want to wear the mask. They want,
go get vaccinated.
That too. But it's mainly just wear the mask, and stop coming out the house. That's my gripe. Stop coming out the house if you just had COVID like 2 days ago.
Right.
Don't come around me after 5 days. Don't come around me after 10 days. I got 2 months.
Right.
I'm going to give you 2-3 months. But most of all, like I said on social media the other day, if you just had COVID, like
you have
3
to meet
days
my
ago,
personal requirements.
3 days ago, don't come talking about, doctor said I'd be good in a couple of days. I come through there and drop that off. Like, no. Don't come over my house.
At least 21 days minimum.
No, but what's really triggering my anxiety is that the fact that we're still going through this voter rights.
Yeah, voter rights problem, voter suppression. Mm-hmm.
So we got somebody on here to come talk about voter rights bill, VRA, 1965. We're going to kind of do a little bit of history lesson, and we're going to let her break it down because she is the one with the knowledge. So, and that's what we like to do here on the Soul Fresh Podcast. We like to bring in the people that we feel can best explain these situations and some of these current events that we're dealing with. And so...
Because like we say all the time to each other, we are not the experts.
Yeah.
We are here to facilitate.
Yeah. So we got an expert. and I will say she is an expert. And so, but before we get into those conversations, I'm going to do a quick, brief history, and I'm going to get her to correct me if I miss anything. So, of course, we had the Voting Rights Act of 1965, the VRA. And basically, in a nutshell, it authorizes state governments to oversee elections in southern states where voter suppression was highly visible and where they experienced it. And then, we had the literacy test, grandfather clause, and the most ridiculous thing of all, which is the poll tax.
The poll tax.
You would actually charge people to say, hey, it's going to cost you money to vote. And so we want to kind of connect 1965 to 2022 as far as, and also 2013. I think there was another bill because each year, several years, they tried to revise the voter rights bill.
Right, because you can take it all the way back to Reconstruction where it started in 1865, and then we can bring it all the way up to 1964 where the Civil Rights Act actually stopped the polling tax and the comprehension test. But we're going to get into all that. We're telling too much already.
And if we're going to talk about it, let's go back to the very beginning, the 15th Amendment.
The 15th Amendment, right.
Where it all started. What does that say? So this is what that says. The right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or by the United States or by any state on account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. The Congress, keyword, Congress. The Congress shall have power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. So as you were talking about in 1865, so sometime around 1870s, it worked for a little bit, and then they passed the Enforcement Acts.
Right.
So
because that was Reconstruction was the 1865 to 1877 time
Right.
period, and then they went on to another so they could keep basically that systemic process that keeps rolling through.
yeah, and so they did the Enforcement Act. Then, of course, Supreme Court comes and says, "Nah, that's unconstitutional. Y'all can't do that.
Right.
We don't need y'all trying to enforce that." And they basically said, "Nah, dog, you don't have the right to do that." So so then, as we know now, in 1888 to around 1908, every Southern state began to pass what? Jim Crow.
Jim Crow.
So then Jim Crow, of course, made it even harder and difficult for us to navigate in these spaces of trying to be just black, And as I like to call it in today's time, James Crow III, Esquire.
When did you come up with that? That's new.
That's who he is. He's still here. He ain't going nowhere.
James Crow
He is
III,
James Crow
Esquire.
the Third, Esquire. I came up with that a couple weeks ago, but I'm gonna get that patent.
You gonna get that trademark?
Yeah, trademark. But don't get it twisted. Jim Crow is now James. So
he's evolved.
Yeah. So we've got a nice young lady to come on here and talk about and go further in depth on voter rights
and voter suppression.
All right, so I will tell you a little bit who we got. We've got Fenika Miller. So she is the Senior State Organizing Manager for Black Voters Matter. She also has launched a co-working space here in Warner Robins, which is Succeed Co-work. And also, if you remember, she ran for Georgia House of Representatives of District 147. So we'd like to go ahead and bring to the table Fenika Miller.
Give it up. Miss Fenika Miller.
Hey, thank y'all for having me.
Thank you for joining the podcast.
On the podcast.
Yeah. I appreciate you coming through. So how you been?
I have been well. Tried to get a little bit of rest after the municipal elections last year.
Yeah,
So,
and I know a lot of you people have probably seen her face on social media and then out in the streets on that bus. That bus is amazing.
Get
Black
on the bus.
Voters Matter, as you can see on the shirt. So tell us a little bit about that. First, before we go into that, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Yep, that blackest bus in America. That's what we call it. And the blackest fleet in America, y'all. We love those buses. I am a lifelong resident of Houston County, an organizer, an activist, an entrepreneur. I've been loving these streets, community engagement, voter education work since I was 13, probably a preteen. I worked on my first campaign back in the 1980s on Mr. Houston Porter's reelection campaign.
Oh, wow.
I remember that.
did not
I remember
know.
that.
I remember that too, but I did not know. Wow, you was out there young.
Yeah,
I was out there young because my cousin was out there. You know,
Right.
she would give
Another
me
neighbor of mine.
Who, Charlene?
No, well, Mr. Porter
Mr.
back in the
Porter,
day.
yeah.
Mr. Porter, he was over the bus. What was it?
For the Board of Education,
Right.
the bus barn.
The bus barn. He was over that. Yeah.
Yeah, but he ran for county commission. He was elected twice, but Charlene worked on his reelection campaign in the late 80s. And she would have me and my cousins and brothers out, putting stuff in mailboxes and,
Oh, so it's in you.
It's in me.
That
right?
footwork from the
That's
beginning.
that footwork, right? One of my favorite scriptures is guard the deposit entrusted to you. And so that was poured into me, that service. I'll never forget her laying the phone list of the voter roll on the counter and saying, I know you skipped cartoons this morning and you was out putting flyers in the mail, but I need you to make these phone calls too, right? If we get Mr. Houston Porter reelected, that really helps to transform our communities.
Right.
So I made those calls. I bought into that. He was reelected, and I've been working ever since.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Coincidentally, he's the last black person to be elected countywide in Houston County.
Wow. And that was the late 80s.
Late 80s.
And I remember that. Like you say, we've known him forever because he was always been a deacon at our church. So we go way back with him, or he goes way back with us. So, all right, tell us a little bit about what it says on your shirt, Black Voters Matter.
Black Voters Matter.
What is that?
Black Voters Matter is a national civil voting rights organization.
Right.
Founded in 2016 by Cliff Albright and Latasha Brown. They are the co-founders of the organization. Two amazing, dynamic organizers that have been doing this work for several decades. But back in 2016, if you all remember the Senate race
Yes.
over in Alabama, Latasha and Cliff raised about $250,000 over the course of 2 weeks. And what they did is they gave those resources to organizers, individuals, and folks who were doing the work on the ground, right, in order to elect Doug Jones, to defeat a racist.
I remember, and I remember that year,
Yeah.
a lot of women came out.
Yes.
He had a lot of support for women. So
He had a lot of support from black women.
that's exactly.
Right?
Yep.
And so what they did, because if you all know anything about politics, campaigns typically run from volunteer folks on the ground, volunteers to make phone calls, volunteers to take people to the polls, volunteers to knock on doors. But what they did is they connected resources with those folks. Here's a gas card so you can take folks and you don't have to take this money out of your pocket in order to do that.
Right.
Here's a couple of dollars for you to pay your canvassers a stipend in order to do that work. These ladies were in a church basement making phone calls out of the phone book. Let's connect you with a phone list, a voter list.
Right.
And so that $250,000 investment put into the streets of Alabama sent Doug Jones to the Senate and catapulted Black Voters Matter into the national organization that it is today.
Hot diggity dog. There it is. Got to start from somewhere.
Yeah, exactly.
You know.
So I understand in 2018 you ran for Georgia House of Representative District 147.
Yes.
So close race.
Yeah.
I remember it like it was yesterday. Very close. And what I want to compare is, and this is just me, I see a lot of similarity to Stacey Abrams. You know, and that's a compliment.
It is.
It's a compliment only because
It's
she
the
was in that same,
mannerisms.
she was in that same situation where, you know, close race, almost got it, needed it, we wanted it, but then again, she flipped it on us.
Yes.
And went out there on the ground and did the work.
Right.
And that's what you've been doing.
Yep.
You know, a lot of people don't understand, and you know, you had a lot to do with a lot of stuff. Like you like the Godfather behind the scenes.
Yeah,
You know?
that's what it is.
You know, you out here flipping counties. You out here putting in the work.
The
but,
puppet master.
Yeah. So let's
That's
talk.
what you call it.
Let's talk about that experience in 2018. As far as what that put in you, did that put that fire in you to come out? And do you feel that this is where you need to be, or do you plan on running for office again? Like, where do you feel that your best place is to be? And what space would you rather navigate? Because you're doing your thing out here.
Yeah.
You know?
So I love the streets.
Yeah.
Just a little bit of background. So I ran for office in 2010 the first time, remember?
Okay.
So that campaign with Mr. Porter, got engaged in party politics. 2007, ran the Obama office here in Warner Robins, and then went real hard into partisan politics. So in 2010, you all remember that was the height of the healthcare debate, the ACA, getting a lot of blowback. Our state legislature at that time sent back $1 billion in infrastructure money, right, from the state of Georgia that we could have used to save rural hospitals, talk about healthcare, retrofit existing rail to high-speed rail, all kinds of things that we're talking about now in this Build Back Better. That was also a census year, 2010.
Sure was.
So remember, 145, which was 147 in 2018, it used to be House District 145, which covered from Fagan Mill all the way to Dunbar,
Oh, okay.
right? But after that census year, probably 8,000 black people on Dunbar, from Green Street to Dunbar, were drawn out of that district,
Oh, wow.
right? So it took us 8 years from 2010 to 2018 of work in the community of voter engagement in order to get back to the space in 2018 where we could see another close House race.
So what happened in between those years from 2010 to 2018 because of that census happening? You said that the people were basically cut out of that. Were they put into a different district, a different area?
Yes, that district is represented by Robert Dickey, who lives in Crawford County.
Okay, so,
Right.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All you had to say was Crawford County.
Crawford County, right? So not even a part of Houston County. And
So they just moved just to a completely whole different county.
they drew the map and the lines, yes, so that those folks would be represented by someone in a completely different county.
Wow.
And that's what we see again here now with redistricting. But, I wanted to give that context because, we've been putting in the work all that time. Leader Abrams, an amazing woman. So, just to be compared to her, she has been what I call my girl crush, right?
Yeah.
Since, those work, that trench work on the ground leading up to that. But in 2018, like I said, it took those 8 years in order to do the voter education through a nonprofit and engaging folks on the ground, just to say, hey, we can potentially pick up this seat. We deserve better representation. We're missing out on resources. We don't have an advocate. So we hit the ground again in 2018. Some folks think that, that when you run for office and you don't win, that's a loss, right? I never say it's a loss. It's always a learn, right? How we dig in deeper. Sometimes to be a spotlight candidate, to really raise awareness of the issues that are affecting the community. And that's what we did. Of course, we came up short by 1,000 votes, right? But you don't have to be in elected office in order to serve your community.
That's right. That's right.
So I knew that in order to close that gap even further, we had to make sure that we had somebody behind the scenes pushing, doing the voter education, beating the ground, doing voter registration, talking to folks in our community about the issues. And that's what we did.
Yeah, right. Because you had you took a real big part in the district attorney race, which was, another kind of sad loss and kind of shady, almost a little bit. I'm going to keep it real, because we know the shady business that happened after that, 6 months later, and he decides to retire. Yeah. So that's just pure petty, but it also, gives a lot of sense about where we're at. We're in Houston County.
Yes. But remember now, so Erica ran and Angela countywide, and we haven't had a black countywide elected official since Mr. Porter.
Mr. Porter, right.
Right. Erica came within 2,800 votes, largely because of the footwork and the groundwork that was done in Warner Robins. So in 2018, we were close. We received more votes out of Houston County for Leader Abrams and candidates at the top than she received out of Albany. Right. So 24,000, a little bit over 24,000 here, about 22,000, a little bit under in Albany and Dougherty County. But she only missed it by 55,000 votes. But it really wasn't a fair fight again, because the person, her opponent, was overseeing the election.
Right.
And so it just takes the groundwork. We have to, as a community, lean in even more, right? So back in 2020, when it was time to run again, when we had amazing women running, when we had the president, the triple trifecta for the Senate seats, I decided not to run again because I wanted to help build out that infrastructure that candidates and that our community needed. And we saw the results of that. We saw Warner Robins proper turn blue for the first time in over a decade. We saw historic turnout in a runoff election where we delivered 2 Senate seats and Warner Robins flipped blue again. We saw Erica come within 2,800 votes of that margin. But still, at the top of the ticket, we don't see the same level of enthusiasm and engagement for folks at the bottom. Those district attorney, clerk, state house races. We still saw the fall off there. And so we got a lot of work to do.
We talked about that with a previous guest, I believe it was Mike Jones.
Right.
And we talked about, we had him on the podcast. And so we discussed the importance of the races at the bottom. It starts from the bottom. And I think what is misconfused and a lot of misconception is that a lot of people focus on those top elections and forget about that district attorney, forget about that county clerk, and forget about that city council. Because if you want to build your community up, you can't. President ain't got nothing to do with it, or the Senate ain't got nothing to do with your community. You need to be voting for your city council.
Build from the bottom.
Got to have the foundation built up.
Absolutely.
And I think that's where we're still struggling at in this community. But like I say, the work you're doing, I think you and a lot of others are getting the message out there as far as putting the work in, putting the ground, starting at the ground floor and making people aware of this city council race. So as you can see, we just got a first black mayor, LaRonda Patrick. So let's give a shout out to her.
Give another shout out.
Yes. First black elected and first woman elected.
And the other trifecta. First woman, First black, youngest.
Period.
Yeah. Facts.
Yes.
Triple threat.
We love to see it.
Yeah. Ain't nothing really, everybody love that.
You know, so a lot of the work that we do with Black Voters Matter, because when, you know, to go back with the engagement piece, right? So doing that engagement for all of those years and talking to folks about issues. But even with my own nonprofit of doing that work, we didn't have necessarily the resources. So when Black Voters Matter launched, my organization, we became a partner with Black Voters Matter on the ground, right?
Okay.
So you marry the work with the resources, and that's where we see all of these. And then I was brought on staff with them in 2020. So I've had it from both perspectives, from a partner, now on staff. So in 2021, when folks said that municipal turnout was going to be extremely low, we broke records again all across the state of Georgia, right? Municipal turnout was up 13%.
Quick question. I know you've seen a lot of like you said, they would just move votes and things such as that to different districts. That's somewhat considered gerrymandering, right?
Redistricting.
Right,
yes.
redistricting. How much more of that do you see from a personal standpoint that a lot of people don't see or they don't talk about because people don't, for some reason, they feel like gerrymandering is like a myth, like it doesn't exist, like it hasn't been being done in districts and states and counties for years and years. How often do you see it and other people just don't notice that it's happening?
Most people don't pay attention to it, right? Most people don't. They know that they have to vote for president, governor, your statewide, and your constitutional officers. But when it comes to school board, if I live on one side of Fenika Mill and my child goes to school over here, but my neighbor across the street, they vote or their child goes to school in a completely different district, right? That's the crux of what gerrymandering is, where instead of being drawn into power, those who are in elected office decide to choose their constituents and draw folks out of power, where you marginalize the voices of the people in the community to determine who they want to be represented by. But it happens all the time at the city, the county, the school board, not just the federal, or the statewide offices. And it happens with both parties, right? That's one thing that I love about issue organizing. It's completely different from political organizing, where most folks will get engaged around a campaign, right?
Yeah.
So I know I'm gonna run for office. I'm gonna start talking to people in August. Well, at Black Voters Matter, we know that the issues affecting Black folks don't start or stop on Election Day.
Right.
We do our work 365 days a year, and we talk about the issues. And we also know that representation does not equal power. So all skin folk ain't kin folk.
No.
Hey. Y'all heard that, right?
Right? We still have to hold those folks accountable, no matter how much we want to see and celebrate moments, right, where folks are at decision-making tables who can really play a major role in steering resources into our community for education, for clean water, environmental issues, all of those things, school board policy.
Right.
But sometimes we have to hold those folks, we have to hold them to the count, just as much, and sometimes more, because I don't want my brother or my sister to fail, right?
Right.
But I also don't want them to look a certain way to other outside communities. I don't want white people to talk about my brother, my sister at the table, right? And sometimes that causes us to be apprehensive about accountability.
Right.
My job now is to move us toward accountability,
Right.
regardless of what the person looks like that's in office.
Speaking of accountability and talking about redistricting, let's move the conversation over to something that's real important, which is voter suppression. How come in 2022 we're still dealing with voter suppression? And will we ever be free? Will they ever stop attacking us and directing us? It's kind of like they're almost scared of our economic power and our political power. It's like, come on. Like,
Yes, that's exactly what it is.
That's
It's
exactly
not
what
no
it
kind of
is.
scared. They scared.
Yeah.
Your friend James.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't understand. It's like, I just don't get it. So why are we still dealing with voter suppression in 2022? And give us some examples of what it looks like today.
Because we're winning.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
Because we're winning. Because in 2020, you saw the state of Georgia flip blue for the first time since the 1990s, right? Thank y'all. I appreciate that. You saw 2 Senate seats flip. You saw us elect the first black senator from Georgia since Reconstruction.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And there was white backlash.
Yeah.
Right? And there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. We didn't have time to fully celebrate what happened on January 5th, those historic victories.
Because January 6th
January 6th came in and pulled the rug from up under our.
Mm-hmm.
But January 6th started, that was just a tipping point. That conversation started the day after the presidential election.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
right?
yeah.
Those plans began the day after the presidential election. Because every time that you see black people move into a position of power, of electoral power, right? Of changing and being able to be in a position to transform the political landscape of a country, you're going to always see a blowback.
Right.
And that's what happened. So historic Senate wins, historic presidential election, insurrection, legislative session started the Monday after. And then you saw 47 bills introduced into the Georgia State Legislature to restrict the right for folks to vote.
Yes.
Yeah. And now that you mentioned that,
Which is disgusting.
Voter rights bill in Georgia, that's what we're dealing with now. So I got some notes here on some things that we got going on now that's pretty much voter suppression. So one of the provisions now is not allowing people to be fed or delivered water. And I understand that it's a misdemeanor if it's delivered 25 feet within a person or 150 feet. And so, and then we got some other provisions that they've made, which is the drop boxes.
Yes.
So prior to and during in 2020 election, there were 94 drop boxes located in and around Atlanta from what I read. And then now they've broken them down to only 23. So, which is going to make people hard to get to certain locations.
Absolutely.
And they're kind of, they messing with the times.
Period.
So now those drop boxes can only be located in certain government official buildings, which they have the right to change the time and say, no, you know what? No, dog,
we only gonna be open from 9 to 5.
That's right.
You can't get in.
And but I got to go to work.
Historically, it's been like 7 to 7. And so,
And outside, so it can be accessed after hours if you're at work, right?
Yeah,
Right.
Yep.
Yep. So misdemeanor water, that's what I call it, right? Now, think about Houston County, because we did line warming during the 2020 election. During the first week of early voting in a presidential year, y'all, we only have one early vote polling location open, and it's in Perry, right?
Yep.
That year, it was extremely hot in 2020.
Yes.
Lines were 8 to 9 hours long. We loaded up our van. We took water, snacks, gave them to everybody. We ain't trying to say just because you're black, you get some water, or just because you might
It's
be
hot.
whatever. Yeah, it's hot.
Yeah.
People, plus there was a lot of distrust because the former occupant of the White House kept saying, don't vote by mail because they're going to steal your vote. So
Right.
people were also going in to cancel out their absentee applications, which takes another 10 to 15 minutes. So passing out water and drinks. So that's one thing. Misdemeanor water. You got to be at least 125, almost 150 feet from a polling location. Okay?
So that's the same as a noise ordinance.
Basically, depending on what city you live in. Yes, right. And think about this too now. So that the drop boxes, eliminating those, now it's only 1 per 100,000 people.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We got 160,000 people in Houston County.
Active voters.
One drop box, y'all, come on.
Yeah.
Right. The most egregious part, though, that people don't often talk about are, so yes, the provisional ballots, but voter challenges, unlimited challenges to voters. So if I am a voter, you may have been my neighbor. You might have got in the garage and I don't see you come and go as frequently, right? But I know that you may be a Democrat and I'm a Republican. I don't see you come and go. If I go to the polling location and say, I don't think he lives in that district, he shouldn't be allowed to vote.
Oh.
Right? I can challenge your right to vote. And I can do that unlimited. Now, I have to bear the burden of proof.
I did not. Now, that's something. I did not
Yes.
know about that. Now.
Unlimited challenges to voters. It's like somebody got to vouch for you. Remember back in the 60s in Jim Crow, if the white man said that this Uncle Mo's
Right.
is good, you can go and let him vote.
Grandfather clause.
Right,
like,
exactly.
if
Right.
you're
Right?
He's good with me.
He good with me.
Because we go way back.
Period.
Right.
That's the same thing. You good with me.
Yeah.
True the Vote challenged over 5,000 voters during 2020. in the 2020 election, tried to get them tossed out so that they could not participate in the Senate runoff elections right here in Houston County. Now, if you got 5,000 challenging 5,000 here, 12,000 over there, 3,000 over here, 1,500 over here, that's those 11,600 and whatever votes the former occupant said he needed, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's how we win. That's how they cheat.
Yeah. Well,
Did you know about that one? That was one I didn't know.
Yeah,
I didn't know
did.
about the challenge.
I'm not gonna say the word I want to say. I'm gonna be nice on this podcast, but it's still boo boo. But they just trying to sprinkle a little essential oils on it.
Yeah.
You're trying to say
Yes.
that. Well, it at least it smelled good,
Yeah.
Mr. King. You know, and so I know you mentioned. Can you talk about the? It's also now legal for a state to send out unsolicited ballot applications.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, so in which I think in 2020 the Republican organization or elected officials did the same thing.
Uh-huh.
But like I say, as you said earlier, when you winning, we right.
Right.
When they losing,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
y'all wrong.
Yes. Remember now, in the middle of a pandemic, the height of a pandemic, Georgia had just received new voting machines probably January, February of that year.
I remember
right?
that.
Then we had our primaries, and then we had November. So very little time for poll workers and election workers to get trained. And so the Secretary of State sent out, those applications. Other organizations that are nonpartisan organizations also sent out absentee applications to everybody. We wanted folks to be safe.
Right.
Right. But when we started, it's no fun when the rabbit's got a gun.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. So when folks started voting absentee by absentee, in high rates, right?
They were like,
and
no,
you
we
saw
gotta
the
put a
benefit of
stop to that.
Absolutely. So SB 202 changed that. It's now a 2-page application. No one can send out an unsolicited application for an absentee ballot. We in the third year of the pandemic now.
Right.
Remember that. Third year. It's 2 pages. It's a small line on the back. It used to be where if you were a senior or elderly voter, disabled voter, if you request one absentee application, they would just send it to you for the rest of the year.
Right.
No longer. On that second page, you got to check this little small box, right, in order to do that. And there's a lot of apprehension among older voters now about voting absentee.
Right, because they're scared that somebody's going to
Absolutely.
come in there, take it, or do something with it. They don't know what's going to happen to it once it leaves their hands.
Or that they themselves can be criminalized for it.
Right, because they might try and say you falsified information on
Absolutely.
it. Right.
And also, SB 202 takes the power and the authority out of your local Board of Elections offices. So if someone challenges your vote, right, and they don't like the way that hearing went, now it can go to the Secretary of State's office and to the Attorney General to investigate you. Then they can remove your Board of Elections workers.
Now,
and
what
put
about
somebody else on there?
What about challenging back? Can a person do that? Say that, like you said, the neighbor, you gave the example, but they challenged you. I don't think they live in this district anymore. Can you turn around and counter like, well, I don't think you live there?
Yes. So anybody can have unlimited challenges, right? Anybody can do unlimited challenges. But the Board of Elections, once they receive that challenge, then they have to send you out a notice in the mail, right? Then if you don't respond within a certain amount of time, then your vote may not count. But so there's a short window. And also remember that the time from a runoff election to the general election was also shortened. So that's a 28-day period. So if somebody challenges your vote during a runoff, you really may not have time to cast to have your vote counted.
I love these in-depth conversations that we have with people when I get information I wasn't expecting. I mean, stuff that I know.
Yeah.
You know stuff, but then again, you don't know stuff.
Don't know stuff.
And that's a large part of our work, right? And that's why we say we do this work 365. So, the Freedom Rides last year, we took a bus from every one of our states, 10 states across the country, and had a rally to let folks know and raise awareness around what is in these bills, spring into action, get the voter education out year round. We can't just start during election because folks have to know what the changes are so they can be equipped for how to access the ballot and to be an informed voter.
And see, that's why I'm glad that we have this avenue, this outlet to be able to have people come on and give the truth. because some people might listen to this just like I didn't know about the challenging thing. They might hear something else that they didn't know about and take it home later and say, you know what? Well, dang, I need to look further into that so I can get better educated in this whole voting process. Because people don't realize every year there's some type of voting cycle that's happening, whether you think it impacts you or not. You have a choice in the say-so of what's going to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
So where are we at on getting that reversed?
There are several lawsuits that have been filed. None of them have come before, to have a deciding factor on it yet. So litigation can go on for years. Right now, the legislature just started their session last Monday, and already they're talking about making further voting restrictions, reducing or eliminating absentee voting altogether. Making further restrictions on drop boxes. We can't out-organize voter suppression. We're doing a good job of getting our folks out to vote, right? But the more progress that we make, the more barriers that folks put up. We need federal protection of our voting rights. We see that has stalled in the Senate, right? We have to stay engaged all the time, y'all. And we can't be despondent around when things don't look like, right? We are winning. I want to reiterate that. And I always tell our partners across the state that we are going to always lean into our power. Because as you expressed earlier, Brian, we've seen this before, right? We had to count jelly beans, right? We had to, read the Constitution or recite all of those things, right? So we've seen these things before, and yet we are still winning, right? Still dealing with it, unfortunately, but still winning.
Right.
But we do need federal protection of our voting rights. Black voters got out in the street in record numbers in 2020 and again in 2021. We delivered the triple trifecta. Georgia did that.
Yeah.
No other state in the country had 2 Senate seats on the ballot. It was Georgia. We delivered that for the entire country, and we need our elected officials to deliver for us.
Go ahead, D.
No, I was just going to, respond to what she said. I think by what a lot of people witness what Georgia do, a lot of people going to say, "Oh, Georgia getting it. Like we gonna jump out there too." And I think it just brings more support, makes more people more focused on the agenda and say, you know what, we need to get out here and do the same thing.
Quick question. Well, it relates to it, not all the way off the subject. When that bill passed last year, a lot of the Hollywood companies, movie companies, and things like that started wanting to pull back because, believe it or not, people don't understand. Georgia, well, Atlanta is the Hollywood of the South right now. I mean, and the economy
Facts.
that's coming in from all of these studios and everything coming in. What or has it been discussed at all amongst some of your constituents or people in political seats, like how the economy is being affected because of the negative outcome of that voter suppression bill?
I don't think the economy is being affected at all. Now, I won't go as far as I would like to on here because, my thing is I would shut it all the way down because folks only understand green, right? But when that legislative session started, our partners on a Georgia call, Black Voters Matter, Georgia partner call, we have 130 partners in 75 counties, and we primarily organize in rural, middle, south, and southwest Georgia. We don't typically do Atlanta. Our partners who had just won all of those historic races, they said, we are not going to take this. We launched the corporate accountability campaign where we put 2 full-page ads, one in the AJC and then in papers all across the state telling corporations that they have a responsibility to the folks, to the consumers, in order to stand up and make a public stance against voter suppression.
Right.
So we held 35 direct actions across the state at World of Coca-Cola, at Delta, at Aflac, at UPS, all across the state, asking corporations and their CEOs to get involved. And then we saw the Chamber of Commerce. Right, coalesce all of those CEOs and get engaged, but not to stop voter suppression bill, right? We have to be very, we got to be politically astute, knowing that voting is only one tool in the toolbox that we can use, but we can flex. We also have to think about what kind of consumers we are.
Right.
Right. Are we woke and aware?
But see, that's still a problem. That's still a problem that we were discussing on a recent podcast. We're still one of the biggest consumers.
$1 trillion.
I mean, but we're not consuming it with us. We're not putting back.
But that's why I think
we're not spending on our own community like we should.
We still watch the NFL. Now we talked about this off camera, right?
Yeah.
And we still watch NFL, right? And we see how they treat our brethren.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
But we love to be entertained.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that, right? But at some point we have to take a more united stand.
Oh, yeah.
And Black people are not a monolith. Don't
No,
get
we're
me
not.
wrong.
Right.
Because the more I do this issue organizing, man, I can go down to Waycross, Georgia, and find some of the most conservative Black folks.
What I tell you about Waycross? What's the one
we know
place
about
I always
Waycross,
talk
yeah.
about? Boy.
We're not a monolith, and we don't expect to be a monolith. But when it comes, we can't be individualistic either. And that was one thing Dr. King said. I fear I've integrated my people into a burning building, right? Where we are chasing after the worst excesses of white America, materialism, right? Individualism. One thing, if it's good for me, right, as an individual, that's great. But if it hurts my entire community, that's something that I cannot stand or go along with, right? I'm always looking at the bigger picture, which is why I love my job, because we focus on issues and I get to talk to Black folks and Black voters and Black community about issues, regardless of political party. Because, truth be told, I don't always believe in this system, right? But I know it's systems on top of systems on top of systems. I know both parties have had a play in it. But I also know that one party actively wants to keep their foot on my neck. And my local delegation voted right along with their party, with the party line, every last one of them.
Well, does it also have to do with, because a lot of those people in sheets are in a lot of those seats?
What you say about James?
Yeah, he never left.
It's more sophisticated, right?
Yeah. Well, that's how systemic racism works. It in the beginning, it used to be all out in the open, but then they had to find a way. See, because you can pass many laws you want, but you cannot pass a law on how to make people act. They're always going to have their individual, personal lack of moral value. So therefore. Is going to be always embedded in education or embedded in politics or embedded in your workplace. Reason why this person might be rising faster than you when you might be more qualified. So therefore, they're going to always brush it up. Just like I said earlier, it's still boo-boo.
Absolutely.
They
Absolutely.
Just sprinkle a little essential oils
on
that.
Right. Put a little fragrance. Politics is, I tell people, from the rooter to the tutor. If you eat pork, you know what I'm talking about, right? From the time that you're born, an elected official signs your birth certificate. And when you die, an elected official signs your death certificate to open your business. An elected official has to give you that license, right? And that is local level. Your mayor appoints people to boards, your planning and zoning. Why are these types of businesses and industry in our communities, right? Predatory lending. All these dialysis centers and plasma centers, right? And we get all into that, right? But every aspect of our lives is touched by an elected official. Even the fibers right here in this shirt, right, have to be approved by somebody. The amount of bugs or feces that is in your food when you get ready to go to get your soup. Somebody, an elected official, approves that.
She's speaking truth too. People do not think that your food does not have stuff in it. It does. Just because she said those words does not mean it's just overly powdered in it, but it's in there. Just calm down. Continue.
Don't get scared, y'all.
Yeah.
Okay, don't be scared. Eat your food, pray on over it like they say at church. But it's a little bit in there. But an elected official moderates that, right?
How much it's going to be.
How much it's going to be. So everything that we touch, right? And when we rise, we organize, when we lean into the power that we have, because we are some powerful people, y'all.
Oh yeah.
Right? Then, and we exercise or we flex on them at the polls, right? You can expect some kind of natural, what is it? The fear that people have talked about. But we still have to do the work. We still have to be more sophisticated in how we move. We still can't just be, if I got a nice car, but my neighbors over here are, unhoused, or, the children are going to schools that are not equal, right? We got to be concerned about every aspect of our community.
Right.
Everything.
And that's a problem with these days, too. A lot of people in the community are not taking care of the community anymore. Because it's like you were talking about, is it for you? Is it good for you? But is it bad for everybody else?
Absolutely.
And these days, nobody cares about everybody else. The majority of people, honestly, I'm good right now.
Yeah.
Well,
I got food on my table.
No, you're right.
Right.
It's I think as a community, we've become a little bit more selfish. I think in the 60s, and I think it's weird to say, every time we make these progressions in society, it actually kind of weakens us, it seems like, because the farther you go back, we seem like we stuck together more.
Yeah.
The more we go in the future, the more we're dividing.
But look at this. Check this out. What started, though, you said in the 60s, when the black household was still a big thing, when the mama and daddy were both there. But then it started getting to the point where, hey, welfare is this thing. There's this thing called welfare. But guess what? You can't get it because you got that man living in the house that got that job.
Now I'm going to push back. I'm going to push back.
But you know what I'm saying?
I know the premise.
Right. The premise of that, what they're saying.
I know the premise, but I'm going to push back.
Right. No, go ahead. I'm just saying that's what a lot of people say it comes from, where the black man got pushed out the household, and then the black family started breaking down. So then in turn, the black community started breaking down. And so here we are as black individuals.
Yes. And a part of that is true and accurate, right? But when Ronald Reagan started that welfare queen, talking point, right? That caught like wildfire, and to our detriment as well. There are more black two-parent households in existence than folks would like to give us credit for, right? There are also a lot of single women households and single mothers who are doing excellent jobs. Systems on top of systems on top of systems on top of systems. And I think we have to be careful in the way that we frame in order to make sure that we shift the narrative, right? We reclaim the narrative. No, the black community is strong. We are not necessarily where we want to be. The wealth gap is still where it was post-Reconstruction, right? But that is not because of a man and a woman in the household. That's because of some policy. That's because somebody wrote a policy that disenfranchises. And James Esquire, that you called them, they've gotten more sophisticated in how they frame those policies. So, we are in a system that does not love us.
Right. And they're going to find every loophole they can to keep us.
Every loophole that we can, they can.
Yeah. So let's talk about Succeed Cowork.
Okay.
How do we get there? How did you develop that space and just tell us a little bit about it? Like, it's for women, right?
We are an inclusive co-working community.
Okay.
Men, the brothers, y'all are welcome to come to Succeed. Come on. We take equal opportunity dollars. I started Succeed Co-work. So as I shared earlier, I founded a nonprofit to teach women and girls how policy affects their lives. That was shortly after the 2010 election. But in doing that work, we convened Black Women and Girls Awareness Day at the Capitol, where we talked about the different issues affecting Black women and girls. And we can't nonprofit ourselves into economic wealth, right? We have to come over here and look at economic development as a major piece and a plank of the work that we have to do. Politics, health, economics, all of those things work together. And so I got my master's, thought you had to go back to school, got in a little bit more debt. Y'all don't have to do that. Started mentoring with SCORE, Middle Georgia, and went through the chamber circuit and all of that. And there is a role for the chamber, but there is not necessarily specific outreach, resources, or education and attention placed on Black and minority businesses.
No.
So my partner and I started, the Minority Business League. We would hop from one Black business to the next, highlighting those throughout the region. Started working with Mr. Habersham and just decided to start Succeed Co-work. The acronym Succeed is a startup center for community empowerment and entrepreneurial development.
Okay.
Right? So anything you can do at Starbucks, you can come over here, you can get your coffee, you can do your work, you can use your Wi-Fi, you can connect with other like-minded individuals, and you can learn about how you can move, navigate, and organize in community to build a stronger community for us.
That's fantastic.
It's funny you mentioned that. I just went through an experience, me and my wife. I don't want to put nobody out there. Certain chambers. I'm not, could be anywhere. I'm not going to say where. Could be anywhere. But what I've learned is it is not for us. And it's funny you mentioned that. And I learned that experience, like, this is not designed for us. This is not working for us. I don't think I'm going to be paying this year.
And I have some friends who swear by it, right? But again, it's in what your aspirations are for your individual business. My goal and my focus, and I believe my purpose, is our community writ large.
Yeah.
Right? So that information about businesses, that those policy decisions, those policy positions that the chamber take have to be beneficial for Black businesses, minority businesses in the community. They just put a statement on their site that they're against Build Back Better. Why?
Yeah.
We need all this infrastructure work.
Yes.
We have board advisories in Warner Robins every week.
Yeah, that's a shame.
Right? Why would you be against something that is going to improve the infrastructure and the livelihood of everybody?
And benefit everybody in the long run.
And benefit the entire community.
Right.
Right? And again, now we talk about that Georgia Chamber because they were one of the main ones with that SB 202. I cannot support, buy into, or pay anybody who's going to use their resources and their platform or influence to the detriment of me or my folks.
Right. I understand that. That makes total sense.
Yeah, so what are we going to see from you next? What's next? You don't tell all your secrets.
I won't. I promise you.
Be strategic. But
this year you will see us lean into the organizing power again. You will see historic Black turnout again. And that's going to be my focus, and that's my sole focus. It is to build the capacity of Black grassroots organizations across this state, so that we can build, electoral power, and see the benefit of that in our communities. Okay. That's it for now.
Right. All right. Got you. So we're coming up on the end of the podcast, and at the end of each podcast, we like to do a little game called 5 words. So J. Steve's going to give you a word, and then that one word, you just respond with one answer. So here's an example. So if I said Fenika, you give me that response. Just one word.
One word?
First thing that comes to your head.
Oh, Lord. See, I'm about to tell my
like
age, y'all, because I ain't quick on my feet.
If I said Fenika,
it's all right.
If I said Fenika and you said powerful.
Gotcha. Okay.
Right. All right. You got it?
Okay.
So let us know when you're ready.
Okay. Do I have a counter? Doom.
Oh, now BK, we hit the crickets on you if you need to.
Yeah. If you take too long,
no.
Don't that's the sound you're going to hear.
Okay. I'm ready. Go ahead.
All right.
I might start saying princess. No boys.
All right. First word. Black.
Power.
Politics.
Got to.
Economy.
Wealth.
People.
Justice.
Stacey Abrams.
Leader.
All righty. That's 5 words for the day, bro.
5 words for the day. All right. Give it up for Fenika Miller.
Thank you so much for joining us.
A little slow on the claps that time, wasn't it?
Yes.
Thank y'all.
His age.
All right. So Fenika, that's your audience right there. go ahead and plug yourself. Let them know what they need to do. Let them know what they can do, and let them know how to do it.
All right, y'all, listen, Fenika Miller. With Black Voters Matter, what we're going to do is we're going to get vote ready,
Yes.
right? We're going to check your registration status.
Wow.
We're going to check your district. You're going to talk to 5 friends and family members. You're going to connect and plug in with us at www.blackvotersmatterfund.org so you can find out where we are, when that Blackest Bus in America is coming, and how you can learn how to build grassroots electoral power right where you are. Let's go, y'all. Can't stop, won't stop.
Can't stop, won't stop. I like that.
All right, give it up for her. So I hope you enjoyed this podcast with Fenika Miller talking about Black Voters Matter, voter suppression, and of course that we only got an hour, so we try not to go too long. But so hopefully we can have her back, and we'll do a part 2, and we'll follow up on some other questions and get some other answers as far as if things decide to change or whatever.
Probably bringing another guest to help piggyback off of things with her.
Yeah. So. Looking forward to having you back, and I really appreciate you coming out. I've been watching you, like literally been watching you, especially I had already knew you before my sister's campaign and Erica's, but just watching you work and as a Black woman, just really out there, just being out here for the people and being about the work and being genuine about it, and that just says a lot. And so I hope to see good things for you in the future, praying for you.
Yes.
Rooting for you. And as it is, we out of here. So I'm your host, BK.
And I'm your host, J. Steve.
Peace.